Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com.
Are you a
9, 8,
Okay, so we're gonna be
Welcome to Gather Geeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Welcome to Gather Geeks. Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. Here we are, another edition of Gather Geeks.
Carla McDonald is founder and editor-in-chief of Salani Air, an Austin, Texas-based website dedicated to the art of entertaining. They created the Salani Air 100, a list of America's 100 best party hosts. We'll get into that list, but we wanted to have Carla join us to discuss what makes a good host, trends in hosting events, and what's unique about parties right now. And in this heated political climate, can you talk about politics? So, David, you have a theory that CEOs don't make the best hosts. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, I believe that the smartest CEOs have become great collaboration artists, what I like to call them. And they know how to actually use a room and figure it out and be outgoing and realize that it's not about them, it's about their guests. Most CEOs sort of have this sort of egocentric thing where they want people coming to them. And the smartest CEOs are actually out there. I was, when I was working at the State Department, we did some state dinners and state luncheons. And David Cameron, for example, who was the Prime Minister of England, went to every single table and talked to everybody. And it was a lot of work, but it was the best thing that he can ever do. And it had everybody eating out of his hand in terms of being a host. And I think that more CEOs need to take that charge.
Well, there'll be tips for them and people who work with them in this conversation. So let's take a listen. Hi, Carla. Welcome to Gather Geeks.
Hi. It's great to be with you both.
So you announced the Salani Air 100, which is an annual list honoring America's 100 best party hosts. It's a mix of socialites, celebrities, and other notable names. They range from Bunny Williams to Cindy Crawford and Randy Gerber to Oprah Winfrey to Catherine and David Bradley. It's a diverse list in many ways, and you divide it geographically by city. So let's start with how the list came about in the first place. It's been going on 3 years. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we, when I started the Salani Air, the purpose was really to provide a way to shine a light on the amazing men and women in America who are continuing the great tradition of the Salani Airs of the 17th and 18th centuries and using parties as a way to bring people together, to advance ideas, to make, meaningful introductions and all of those important things and influence change. And so as an outgrowth of that, I wanted to create a list of the 100 people in America that were really doing that the best. And so that is how the Salani Air 100 came to be. And it's a very time-intensive and painstaking process for us to come up with that list every year. It takes us about 6 or 7 months, believe it or not, and involves us sort of querying, more than 1,000 people across the country. And we're looking for people who are really using parties as a way to bring real meaning to people's lives and enhance people's lives. And as I said, continue the tradition of the great Salani Airs in France.
What does that look like when you interview all these people? How are you getting to them? How are you realizing that these guys are the ones, the real deal?
So we ask people in cities across the country who are in the know. So that will range from society editors to heads of nonprofits, to people who have been on the Salani Air 100 list in years past. So we're asking people who are social, who go to a lot of parties and who are, in the know in those cities for the names of people they think should be on the list. And then we get together as a group, the editors of the Salani Air, and go through the list and study it and research it, and that's sort of how we come up with our final list of honorees each year.
So let's talk about 2018 specifically, because this list, there is turnover every year. You have some new names on there. Some people drop off the list. So what is unique about this moment in time in terms of who is hosting these events and why?
I would say what's unique about parties right now, what we're seeing is a need for people to come together. People have a lot on their minds, in terms of what's going on in the world, and the need for human connection seems to be even greater than ever. People want to get together with people who are like-minded or, have different views and talk and meet and understand. And so many of the people on the Salani Air 100 this year reflect that. And they're doing things that are creating opportunities for people to, voice their thoughts about what's going on in the world, gain support for their own feelings, and validate their feelings. And so we're seeing a lot more sort of intimate dinner parties. We're seeing fundraisers, parties that are designed to raise funds for organizations and political candidates even that are important to them. So, we're seeing a lot more of that right now in terms of entertaining.
And is there a really good example from the 2018 list that you could pull out and tell us about the kind of events that they're hosting?
Well, there are really a lot, but there's a woman in Orlando who is the founder of something called the Dinner Party Project. And what she does is she holds these dinner parties to really encourage strangers to come together and meet. So she's trying to bring different parts of the community together. And I like that a lot. We all thought that was really meaningful and important right now in this day and age when there seems to be so much that's causing people to separate. So Dana would be a very good example of that.
What is the dinner party? The big elephant in the room, I guess, is how does a host deal with when you talk politics and it gets divisive? What is the protocol today of that?
Well, most of the hosts I know, and those we've interviewed, so we do interview a lot of these in a section called RSVP, where we ask, are there any topics that you don't like to talk about or won't allow at your dinner table? And most people say no, and so they want people to share what they think about what's going on in the world or, what's important to them. And, I think all good hosts have a good exit plan for if the conversation gets a little too heated. I think that's when you want to introduce some humor and sort of move along to another topic. But again, I think it's part of the trend of entertaining right now is that, people feel a need to get together and talk. And so a good host wants to create that opportunity for them. And we're seeing that a lot.
Mm-hmm. So that's one characteristic of a really good host. What are some of the other things that you look at? What else makes a great host?
We look for people who, certainly there are, as you mentioned, socialites on the list, but that's certainly not the majority of the people on the list. We're looking for people who really know how to use the construct of a social gathering to impact the lives of others. And so these are people generally who are very creative, who are passionate about issues and ideas, and who find really interesting ways of attracting people to their parties and getting them to come and participate in discussions and give money and create new friendships and meaningful relationships and continue those out in the world. And, so those are really the things we look for in the traits of a great host. And, I always say when I do my own parties, what makes me the happiest is, after the party's over, when I see people connecting with one another on Facebook or Instagram, and I realize that, this night has created, so many new friendships and who knows what else. It could be a new job opportunity or a new business opportunity or, any number, or a love connection, And so, so that's what a great host does, is kind of, use a party as a vehicle for enhancing, enriching the lives of others.
Now let's take a quick break and listen to a message from one of our fantastic sponsors, Leo Events. Planning an event and wondering how to ensure your attendees will have the best experience possible? Let Leo Events, an award-winning global events agency, help you create a spectacular meeting or event that will leave your guests cheering and wishing for more. When you're ready to follow the roar everyone is talking about, go to leoevents.com. That's leoevents.com. So dig a little deeper into that. I'm a huge believer in using the Jeffersonian style dinner party approach to things. What are some of the techniques to create these connections that hosts are using today?
I think it starts with the guest list. I think every party really starts with a guest list, and you want to have, a great guest list that's diverse, that's interesting, and then it's about seating your guests. If it's a dinner party, seating them in a way that's thoughtful so that you can create great dialogue. And then, certainly there are other people. There's a wonderful party host in Austin by the name of Walter Robb, who was the co-CEO of Whole Foods. And I love his dinner parties because he's pretty strict about the conversation. He likes one conversation for the whole table. And I like that. And it gives everybody a chance to listen to everybody else's point of view, and everybody gets a chance to sort of talk about what's on their mind. And I find that, there's a lot of listening that takes place, which is really nice. And so, but at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to the host, right. Himself or herself.
This Jeffersonian, that he basically is using the Jeffersonian style dinner party, which is one conversation, creating a sense of almost not a seminar sense, but something that everyone can hear. Because sometimes you go to a dinner party and the person on one side of the table never even meets the person on the other side of the table. So right. A good host has to know how to do that properly.
And I think, so I think that's really nice. And it doesn't work in all situations, and not all hosts are necessarily comfortable with orchestrating that kind of approach to a dinner party. But at the end of the day, I think what makes a party really successful is if the host is authentic to who he or she is, And so Walter is somebody who, as a CEO, is very used to that style of engagement with others, and it works really well for him.
So is he moderating the conversation the entire time? Is that his role, or do guests fill in and serve that role as the conversation moves?
Yes, he moderates it. He kind of steers it. He guides it. He moves it along. He engages people who may be a little bit quiet. I mean, when you're going to one of his dinner parties, you're prepared to work. You're not just going to sit around and, talk about the weather. I mean, he really cares about what people have to say. And I always leave his parties feeling kind of excited about something, whatever the topic was, and, eager to learn more about it, or eager to connect with a few people that I met and take the conversation even further. I mean, it's really very effective.
Do you think that, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I actually had, in the beginning of my career, I had a society magazine. And we had this concept in Washington of cliff dwellers and cave dwellers. And these were the people that permanent Washington, that they felt that it was their responsibility to host dinner parties to connect people who are new in town and connect people who have different points of view. Do you think that is you're kind of saying that in the list that you're creating, but is it the responsibility of the host to actually be doing that on a regular basis?
mean, the word responsibility is throwing me a little bit. I think it be a joy. Responsibility feels a little weighty to me.
I'll buy that.
But yeah, I mean, I think great hosts, people who love to host parties, actually enjoy connecting people, and take great pleasure in knowing that people are going off the next day or the next week, and getting together, and that's a sign of success where any kind of a party is concerned. And so I say to people, think about how many people who matter to you are people you've met at a party, whether it's, a best friend, a spouse, a boss, somebody you hired, a partner in business. I mean, we've all met really significant people at parties. So, they really matter. And again, going back to the Salani Air 100, the reason we did that is there wasn't really any vehicle that was celebrating and honoring these really important people, people who are playing a very, very important part in our lives. And so that's why we wanted to do it and are continuing to do it, even though after I'm done every year, I go, my gosh, I don't know if I can do another one because it's so time intensive. But it's important. And I think it's a way of encouraging people who are really good at this to keep doing it, and just let them know that their efforts are noticed and appreciated.
So you have a theory about the power of the party to make a difference. We may have been discussing it without naming it, but could you just tell us what that theory, the power of the party, is?
Well, I mean, I think that parties are a powerful vehicle for our need to socialize. I mean, our need to socialize is innate, and it's genetic, and we did a story with one of the professors at Duke University because I was so fascinated to just sort of learn about the human need to gather together on a social basis. And, he told me that we're descended from the most gregarious people who ever lived, So if you think about it, on the savannah, a person who had no desire or interest to interact socially with others would have been eaten, by predators. But the people who knew how to, get along with others and who lived in and were supported by social groups survived and reproduced. So, we are descended from those great social people. And he also told me what I thought was quite interesting is that sociability is an inherited trait. It's not a learned trait. So if your parents were very social and sort of party animals, then it's likely that you sort of are too.
Wait, so does that mean that people who didn't inherit that can't be good hosts? Give us some hope here.
Well, I think that it comes easier to those who may be genetically predisposed to it.
Okay.
But I think anybody who recognizes the power of parties as a social and cultural force will work at it, and recognize that they really want to be a part of this. And a good party, it can do a lot of good in the world. I mean, we know that, from raising money with fundraisers and all of that too, as I said earlier, just connecting people in meaningful ways.
How concerned are you with the next generation with social anxiety around social media? They're sitting there looking at their phones all the time. They're not talking to people. Are we losing this inherited skill because of what's going on in the world of social media?
I don't think so. I mean, you could argue that it's a complicated topic, but I mean, you could argue that it's actually encouraging more people to get together socially because they want to post pictures of themselves with a lot of people, Mm-hmm. And, Instagram moments at parties are a big deal, and so you could say that it's actually working the other way. But I think my concern, but it certainly has introduced a new facet to entertaining that requires all of us to look at it with some a fresh perspective. But what I'm more concerned about, I guess, if I look at the next generation in and hosting is that, there's sort of a more relaxed approach to entertaining today, which I think is good. It's good and bad, I guess. On the positive side, a lot of barriers have come down. I mean, there are a lot of great resources, this very well, that are available to people, like Paperless Post, where you can, the invitation process becomes very affordable, effortless. It's also eco-friendly, which matters, But on the downside, what we're seeing is that there's a sort of a more lackadaisical approach to, for example, the RSVP process. So, today people think nothing of ignoring, an RSVP request or, deciding at the last minute not to attend if they've said they were going to attend. And, that creates a huge headache for hosts. And I actually think that's probably, if we looked at what is the greatest danger in terms of the future of parties and hosting parties, it's that, because it creates such a headache for hosts, even experienced hosts, that it kind of turns them off to the idea of entertaining. I mean, we interviewed Caroline Rowan, maybe a month or two ago, and she said this very thing, and she's on the Salani Air 100 and is an exceptional host, really gracious and thoughtful. And, when I heard her say that, I'm so sick of people canceling at the last minute where I have to figure out and redo the seating and this and that, it makes me just not want to do it anymore. I thought, well, that's a real issue. So that's the thing I'm most concerned about, is just this idea that, RSVPing doesn't really matter anymore, when it does. It's very important for, a good host wants to know who's coming so they can take the best possible care of them.
I was told by Tina Brown that when she does events, she has people calling up until the last minute to reconfirm that's one of the only ways that she's able to make sure that the counts are correct. Because,
I like that.
Because people do not. I mean, there's more money is now being spent on wrangling people by people because people not showing up at things.
Yeah. It affects everybody, and if it's affecting Tina Brown, it's affecting everybody. And it's unfortunate. And I wish people understood, those of us who throw parties know, and we're not the ones that are doing this, but people generally who don't host a lot of parties might not understand why RSVPing is important, that it impacts the catering and it impacts the seating and it impacts the flow of the event and, timing sometimes and all of those things. I mean, it impacts the entire party. And so, not to mention costs, So it's that's the one thing that I see happen that I think is a really negative trend.
We're going to take a little break and come right back after this message from Hilton. So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you.
So I wonder if there's a way to communicate that it's going to be a worthwhile event, that it is worth your time. Like, how do you do that? Because we get a lot of invitations. I'm sure you do too, but we're constantly invited to events, and some you see instantly and know, I need to be at this event. Others, maybe go on your B list. Others you can skip, or, you might ignore. So I wonder, are there things like elements of personalization or other ways that make you as a guest say, I need to get my RSVP in now?
Well, that's a great question. And I love, your comment about personalization really just hit me, because I think that's a big one. I think that personal touches really send a message that this is going to be special. So, for example, I hosted my husband's 50th birthday party recently, and I thought it would be a great idea at the time, but by the time I was handwriting letters to invite everybody, halfway through, I thought, oh my God, why did I do this? But, I actually handwrote, every invitation was a handwritten letter about why I wanted that person to attend the party. And, I think when you get an invitation like that, that's sort of, that's special and that shows that a lot of thought and personalization went into it, I think that will get somebody's attention. But, I think it puts pressure on hosts and event planners and, to make these events really special. Unfortunately, and you guys know this better than anybody, we have so many outstanding event planners in this country. So, I think it just, sort of raises the bar.
I have a couple of questions that are based on Carla's rules. If I bring up a topic, I'd love to get your advice. And we've done this with other people. Like what is a good time frame to start a dinner party? When do you start a dinner party?
That depends on that depends on the audience, younger, older, guest of honor. What's the best sort of, hour for the guest of honor? Like, I don't know that there's a hard and fast answer to that. I think it really does depend. But one thing I will say about dinner parties is that, one of my little pet peeves is that I don't think it's a good idea to have those cocktail hours drag on for more than.
That's the next question. How long is a cocktail? Is it 45 minutes or is it an hour?
Yes. Yeah.
45 minutes.
45 minutes. And cocktail hours that go beyond an hour are just, it's not, it's just, people just, they get tired and bored, and so, pacing is a very important element of throwing a great party. You've got to keep things moving and you've got to keep people interested.
Courses. Okay. You bring them into the dinner party room. How long and how many courses do you think are appropriate, and how long should that last?
That just depends. It depends on how formal your event is, So if you're having a very formal event, you're going to have a lot of courses. But, or if it's, a guest of honor where you strategically want to keep people at the table for a conversation, you're going to have more courses, If, on the other hand, it's more of a lively party where you want to keep people moving around, you're going to have fewer. But
what do you want? What do people want today? Do people want to not do the formal dinner parties? Do they I like it. We did Holly Peterson. We did a big interview with her, and she has a rule that the main course that she does preset. She does things like preset the first course, make sure the whole thing, is this. There's only 2 courses and a dessert, and the dessert happens in another place because she thinks people don't necessarily want to sit long time at a table, and that's the modern way of thinking about entertaining today. So that's what I'm trying to get into. Where are we in sort of what people really want?
I think people want to move around. I always serve dessert in another room. I don't think people want to sit at a table for too long. The only time you would, as I said, change that is if you have a guest of honor who, maybe that suits the situation better. But generally speaking, you've got to keep people moving, and so any sort of lingering at a cocktail hour, lingering at the dinner table, lingering here or there where people are starting to wonder what they're supposed to do or what's coming next means the pacing's off. So I agree actually with Holly that I think, I'm not a huge fan of presetting food, but I think serving dessert in another room is really a nice thing to do. And sometimes I think it's very nice to, at that point, introduce some sort of entertainment, whether it's, some music or poetry reading or, or games or whatever it might be.
How about toasts? I come from Washington, so the art of the toast was a huge deal. What is the protocol of toasting at a dinner party now? Are people doing it, or are they just sort of ignoring that now?
No, it happens.
What's the protocol?
Shorter's better. Humor is always important. I just think, a good toast is short and fun and sincere and meaneful.
But who initiates? Where does that happen? I know in Washington, it's very sort of formal. The guest of honor will get up and give a host, and the other people will do it. Is there a protocol for sort of the rest of the world in terms of toasts?
Yeah, I guess again, it's sort of. I hate to say this, but I don't know that there are hard and fast rules. Right. It does depend.
What do you like? What do you like?
I personally like to welcome guests and toast the guest of honor. And then, the guest of honor will, say a few words, and then others may join in and toast after that, which is fine too. But I like the first toast to be mine, just welcoming everybody to the table, and then we go from there.
So we're at the change of the seasons. We're closing summer, headed into fall. Carla, what's your favorite season for entertaining?
Wow, that's really hard. That's like asking me to pick my favorite child, I mean, I love holiday parties. I like to do black tie holiday parties. I think they're glamorous. I do like glamorous parties. I think people like to dress up. I'm in Austin, Texas. So, as opposed to Washington, D.C., where you probably in black tie every other night. We're not, so we're a more casual city. So I think, in Austin, it's really fun to do black tie holiday parties. So I enjoy that. But of course, I love summer parties where it's more relaxed and you're doing a clam bake on the beach. And, it's just, they're all great. The important thing is, have one every season, at least.
I have a question in terms of being a great host. If you want to strategically want to be a host, should you be creating an event every year that's your signature event, or are you doing ongoing dinner parties? What is the strategy for someone that wants to become a host? What do you do? I know it depends on everything, but what is your advice?
My advice would be, pick the type of entertaining that feels most authentic and comfortable to you and run with it. So, some people are more comfortable in smaller groups. And so dinner parties are going to be your thing, and you'll probably be great at them. Some people love grand entertaining and having, 300 people in their home. In that case, do one of those once a year around the holidays, or, a birthday party or something like that. And you can spend your whole year planning that, make it really special. And, of course, that can become your signature event that, is so wonderful that everybody wants, an invitation to it. So I think it's just, find what you're drawn to. I think the best way to be a great host is to be an authentic one. So do what you love.
But the idea of the signature event is kind of interesting. I mean, some people, you hear about people that they live and breathe for that signature event they do every year. And they become bigger and grander or more casual. They just keep improving on that.
Right. And from your list, I think of Heidi Klum is on your list. And I think of her as a Halloween party host, which is so odd, right?
Yeah. And so I think it's, it's kind of fun to be able to own, an event every year in your city. But then of course there's the pressure to always do it. And some years
that's
you
for sure.
For whatever reason. And then what happens, and, I've seen this happen too, where people think that because they didn't get an invitation that they've fallen off your invitation list, not realizing you're actually just not having the party that year. So, there's that side of it too. But yeah, I think it's fun. I mean, I think, having a signature event is really great.
Well, Carla, we really appreciate you joining us on Gather Geeks to talk about what makes a great host and a great event. So thank you for that. And before we sign off, tell our readers how they can reach you, how they can see the list.
Well, they can visit the Salani Air at thesalaniair.com. And the Salani Air 100 list is right there on the top menu bar. They can review, the 2018 list and prior lists from prior years if they like, and also peruse all of our content through our table of contents section.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carla.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're back in our studio. David, Carla used this phrase, power of the party, which resonated with me. What did you think of that?
But I love that idea. I think that you're in an atmosphere where anything can happen, and that people, this concept called social physics, how ideas flow, and ideas flow when people are bouncing into each other. There's also the concept that John Adams said, our president, past president from many, many, many years ago, said that a dinner party is worth 100 meetings. And the kind of intimacy and the kind of things that you get when you're talking on a social level absolutely resonate with people and make them feel something.
Mm-hmm. So Carla noted that today people think nothing of ignoring an RSVP request or changing their mind last minute. I'm sure everybody can relate from their own experiences, but are we more rude today? And the other byproduct of that is that it's turning off event hosts who get discouraged by that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
What's happening here? What do we do about this?
I think you just have to recognize that this is what's going on.
Does it have to be the new norm?
I think it is the new norm. I think people have so much on their plates. There's so many things coming at them all the time that a great host is having their people or them contacting everyone on a regular basis to make sure that they're attending, make sure that they're coming, and that's now has to be built into the program. There are people that are doing nothing but rallying people to come who just forget, and so I think you need to do that now today.
Yeah, if I think about my own experience, when you get these reminders about events continually, whether email or if it's a phone call, you tend to think it's more important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And when the host calls you and say, "Are you coming?" you will not show up.
You don't want to disappoint them personally.
You don't want to disappoint them.
It works with you on that level.
Yeah. That's great. So, Beth, what's going on at BizBash?
Well, award season is starting. This is out in the wider culture. The Emmys are September 17th, and we already have a preview of what's in store for decor and catering at the official after party, the Governor's Ball. There are lots of big changes in store for that, which points to the fact that planners at all types of events are constantly tinkering with their format and seeing what is going to resonate with people today. And you can find a link to that story in our new column, This Week in Los Angeles. Our West Coast Bureau Chief, Claire Hoffman, who Gather Geek listeners may know as part of the team that produces this podcast, has started a weekly look at what's happening in the event industry in LA. So find out about recent events, news, venue buzz, a can't miss Instagram post, and the moves and milestones of the people working in the industry there. You'll also learn how to get in touch with Claire to send her tips and invite her to your events. Look for This Week in Los Angeles on Fridays.
Fantastic. So that's great. And before we sign off, we want to thank Claire and Claire Hoffman for helping get this podcast together, Dave Nelson for being our producer, and Rebecca Pappas for distributing it and getting it on the air. So what do we say?
David.
What do we say?
On.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the Gather Geeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you join us again for the next episode of Gather Geeks. Until then, gather on.
Gather Geeks is sponsored by Leo Events. Need help executing a one-of-a-kind experience that will leave attendees wishing for more? Leo Events is an award-winning global events agency that excels in exceeding clients' expectations and creating remarkable moments. When you're ready to follow the roar, visit leoevents.com.